A millionaire invites homeless twin girls for a Christmas dinner, but when one of them starts to speak, everyone begins to weep. Snowflakes danced softly under the glow of the street lamps, covering the roads with a silent, white blanket. Amid the festive bustle of Christmas Eve, two small figures stood out, motionless and shivering on the icy sidewalk. Lily and Emma, identical twins of about 5 years old, held each other's hands tightly, their wide eyes reflecting the glow of Christmas lights. Their once neatly combed blonde hair was now disheveled and damp from the snow. The thin coats they wore barely protected them from the biting cold. Emma, the braver of the two, took a step forward, pulling her sister along. Her little lips trembled not just from the cold, but from fear. "Mommy," she called softly, her voice nearly swallowed by the busy street's murmur. A sudden flashback invaded their young minds. The antiseptic smell of the hospital, the constant beep of machines, their mother's weak hand, Marie, caressing their faces. "My brave little ones," she whispered, her faint smile contrasting with the pallor of her face. "Mommy loves you. Always." And then, silence. The terrible silence that followed when the doctors led them away from the bedside. Back in the present, Lily sobbed quietly, clutching the small porcelain angel to her chest, her last memory of their mother. Emma, feeling her sister's anguish, took a deep breath and decided to act. "Excuse me," she murmured, gently tugging the coat of an older woman who was passing by. The woman looked down, her festive expression turning to shock at the sight of the two little girls alone. "Good heavens, where are your parents?" the woman asked, glancing around in search of a responsible adult. Emma opened her mouth to answer, but the words stuck in her throat. Tears welled in her eyes, and Lily hid her face against her sister's shoulder. Disturbed by the sight, the woman began calling for help, attracting the attention of nearby passers-by. Soon, a small group formed around the twins, worried voices overlapping in confusion. "Does anyone know these children? Where are their parents? Should we call the police?" Frightened by the sudden attention, the girls took a step back. Their stomachs growled audibly, reminding them that they hadn't eaten in hours. Then a tall, imposing figure approached, gently making his way through the crowd. Robert, dressed in an elegant black overcoat, knelt down before the twins, his blue eyes exuding a comforting calm. "Hello," he said softly, his warm smile contrasting with the surrounding cold. "You look a bit lost. Can I help?" Emma and Lily exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. There was something in this stranger's voice that made them feel safe for the first time since leaving the hospital. Robert noticed the trembling in their tiny hands and the hungry gleam in their eyes. Without hesitation, he removed his scarf and gently wrapped it around both of them. "How about we go somewhere warm and have something good to eat?" he suggested, his voice carrying a reassurance the twins hadn't felt in days. Emma, always the protector, stepped forward. "We can't go with strangers," she said, her small voice determined. Robert nodded, respecting her caution. "You're right to be careful. How about this? We'll go to that coffee shop on the corner, where there are lots of people. You can have something to eat and tell me what happened. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you can leave. Deal?" The twins looked at each other again, hunger and exhaustion finally defeating their fear. Slowly, they nodded. As Robert stood up, offering a hand to each girl, the crowd began to disperse, relieved to see the children being cared for. The trio walked slowly toward the coffee shop, the Christmas lights reflecting in the hopeful eyes of the twins. For a brief moment, the porcelain angel in Lily's hands seemed to glow, silently approving this twist of fate. As they entered the cozy coffee shop, none of them could imagine how this casual encounter on Christmas Eve would change their lives forever. The bell above the coffee shop door jingled softly as Robert opened it, guiding Lily and Emma inside. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon enveloped the girls, prompting another audible rumble from their empty stomachs. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, arched her eyebrows upon seeing the two disheveled children accompanied by a well-dressed man. Robert nodded discreetly, signaling that everything was under control. "A table for 3, stout please," he requested, his voice gentle but firm. "And if you could bring 2 hot chocolates and some cookies to start, We would be very grateful. Seated at a corner table, away from the chilly windows, Robert watched the twins settle into the cushioned seats. Emma, still holding Lily's hand, looked around with a mix of curiosity and caution. Lily, on the other hand, kept her eyes fixed on the little porcelain angel resting in her lap. "So," Robert began, leaning slightly over the table, "may I know your names?" Emma hesitated for a moment, but the smell of the freshly arrived cookies seemed to break down her last barrier of distrust. "I'm Emma," she said, her voice gaining a bit of confidence. "And this is my sister, Lily." Robert smiled, pushing the plate of cookies towards them. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma and Lily. Please, help yourselves." The girls needed no further invitation. With eager hands, they grabbed the cookies, savoring each bite as if it were the most delicious thing they had ever tasted. As they ate, Robert observed them closely, noticing signs of exhaustion and worry on their young faces. There was something about the way they moved, how they protected each other, that spoke of a maturity forced by adversity. "Emma," he said softly, after the girls finished their first round of cookies, "you mentioned out on the street that you were looking for someone. Could you tell me more about that?" Emma swallowed the last piece of cookie, exchanging a quick glance with Lily before answering. "We're looking for our dad," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Mommy said he would come get us at the hospital, but—" Her voice faltered, and Lily squeezed her hand under the table. Robert felt a lump in his throat, understanding the depth of the situation. "And where is your mother now?" he asked gently, dreading the answer. This time Lily replied, her voice almost a whisper. "Mommy went to heaven." She lifted the small porcelain angel, as if to emphasize her point. "She gave us this to protect us." Robert's heart ached. Two children, alone in the world on Christmas Eve, with no one to care for them. The decision formed in his mind before he even realized it. "Girls," he said, leaning closer, "I know we haven't known each other long, but I'd like to invite you to something. I live in a large house not too far from here, and I'm having a Christmas dinner tonight. Would you like to join me?" The twins' eyes widened at the suggestion. Emma, always the spokesperson, voiced both their concern. "But what if our dad comes looking for us?" Robert thought for a moment. "How about this? We'll leave a note here at the coffee shop with my address. If your dad comes looking, he'll know where to find you. In the meantime, you can have a warm meal, a bath, and clean clothes. What do you think?" The girls looked at each other again, hunger and fatigue finally overcoming fear. Slowly, Emma nodded. "Okay," she said. "But can we bring Mommy's angel?" Robert smiled, feeling a wave of tenderness. "Of course you can. He'll be our guest of honor." As they got up to leave, Robert carefully wrote down a detailed note and left it with the waitress, along with a generous tip and instructions to contact the police if anyone came looking for the girls. Outside, the snow had stopped, but the air remained cold. Robert summoned his driver, who arrived within minutes in a luxurious car. The twins stared in wonder at the vehicle, having never seen anything so elegant up close. "All aboard," Robert joked, helping them into the warm car. As the car glided smoothly through streets decorated for Christmas, Robert watched the twins in the rearview mirror. Lily had fallen asleep almost immediately, her head resting on Emma's shoulder. Emma, in turn, fought to keep her eyes open, torn between exhaustion and the need to stay vigilant. "It's all right, Emma," Robert said softly. "You're safe now. You can rest." Slowly, Emma's eyes began to close, the gentle motion of the car lulling her into a long-needed sleep. Robert turned his gaze to the window, watching the Christmas lights blur past. He wasn't a religious man, but at that moment, he felt as though something greater than himself had placed these two small souls in his path. As the car approached the gates of his estate, Robert made a silent promise. No matter what happened, he would do everything in his power to ensure that Lily and Emma had the Christmas they deserved. And if fate allowed, much more than that. The little porcelain angel, secure in Lily's hands, seemed to glow under the car's lights, as if silently approving the journey that was about to begin. The car glided smoothly along the long driveway, flanked by snow-covered trees that stood like silent sentinels in the night. Emma, who had awakened in the last minutes of the trip, pressed her nose against the window, her eyes wide with amazement. Lily, still sleepy, rubbed her eyes, trying to absorb the vision unfolding before them. Robert's mansion emerged from the darkness like a fairy tale castle. Imposing and majestic, its stone walls were adorned with wreaths and twinkling lights that reflected on the snow, creating a magical display. A huge Christmas tree, visible through the windows of the main living room, shimmered with vibrant colors, promising wonders inside. "Wow," Emma whispered, her voice barely containing her excitement. "It's like Santa Claus's house." Robert couldn't help but smile at her innocent comment. "Well, it's not exactly Santa's house, but I hope you'll like it." The car came to a gentle stop in front of the main entrance. Before Robert could open the door, it swung open from outside, revealing a distinguished middle-aged woman with perfectly arranged silver hair and a curious look in her keen eyes. "Robert, what is this?" she asked, her voice a mix of surprise and mild reproach. "Elise, my dear sister," Robert replied, helping the twins out of the car. "Allow me to introduce our special guests for Christmas dinner. This is Emma and this is Lily." Elise raised an eyebrow, her eyes scanning the disheveled girls with a mixture of confusion and concern. Before she could ask more questions, a cheerful voice echoed from inside the house. "Rob, finally you're here. I was beginning to think we'd have to start without—" "Oh!" A jovial-looking man with a warm smile and bright eyes stopped abruptly upon seeing the twins. "And who are these lovely young ladies?" "David," Robert greeted his friend with a nod. "I met Emma and Lily this evening. They'll be joining us for dinner." David, always the optimist of the group, knelt down to their level. "Well, aren't we lucky? More guests mean more fun, right?" The twins, still a bit shy, offered hesitant smiles. David's warmth and friendliness seemed to melt some of their reserve. "Robert," Elise began, her voice low and tense, "can we talk for a moment, in private?" As Robert was pulled aside by his sister, another figure emerged from the house. Martha, the elderly housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, her gentle eyes immediately taking in the situation. "Oh dear," she murmured, her wrinkled face softening at the sight of the girls. "Come in, dears. Let's get you warmed up." With maternal kindness, Martha guided Emma and Lily into the mansion. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. The entrance hall, with its marble floor and grand staircase, gleamed with Christmas decorations. A delicious aroma of roasted turkey and spices hung in the air, making the girls' stomachs growl once more. "First, a hot bath and clean clothes," Martha declared, leading them upstairs. "Then we'll take care of those hungry tummies, all right?" As they climbed, Emma couldn't help but notice the portraits on the walls. Unknown faces looked back from gilded frames, some smiling, others serious. One portrait in particular caught her attention, a young woman with kind eyes holding a baby. For some reason, Emma felt an inexplicable connection with that image. Upstairs, Martha took them to a spacious guest room. "Here we are," she said, opening the doors of a large wardrobe. "Let's see if we can find something that fits you." While Martha rummaged through the wardrobe, two other maids entered, carrying towels and bath essentials. "Sophie, please prepare the bath," Martha instructed. "And Marie, could you bring some snacks for the girls?" The twins watched in amazement as a small army of people mobilized to care for them. It was a shocking contrast to the lonely days they had recently endured. "Now," Martha said, turning to them with clothes in her arms, "who wants to go first?" Emma gently nudged Lily forward. "She goes first," she said, always protective of her quieter sister. The warm bath was a heavenly experience for the girls. Months of worry and days of grime seemed to melt away in the scented water. Martha, with gentle and experienced hands, washed their hair and scrubbed their backs, murmuring comforting words all the while. Dressed in soft pajamas and fluffy robes, the twins looked transformed. Their now clean and brushed hair shone under the room's soft light. Their faces, freed from dirt, revealed the healthy blush of childhood. "Just look at you," Martha smiled, her eyes shining with tenderness. "As lovely as Christmas angels." A gentle knock on the door interrupted the moment. Robert entered, looking a bit tired but smiling at the sight of the girls. "Well, you look much more comfortable now," he observed. "Are you ready to come downstairs and have dinner?" Emma and Lily exchanged glances, some of their initial shyness returning. Sensing their hesitation, Martha intervened softly. "How about I bring dinner up here tonight?" she suggested. "You've had a long day. You can eat here and rest." Robert nodded, grateful for Martha's sensitivity. "Excellent idea. I'll let the others know." As he turned to leave, Emma called, "Mr. Robert?" He stopped, turning back to her. "Yes, Emma." "Thank you," she said simply, her voice full of gratitude that went beyond her words. Robert felt a lump in his throat. "You're welcome, dear. Rest well. Tomorrow will be a new day." As the door closed behind him, Martha began setting a small table in the room for the girls' dinner. Emma and Lily sat on the soft bed, the little porcelain angel between them. "Martha," Lily spoke for the first time since they'd entered the mansion, "do you think Santa Claus will find us here?" Martha paused in her task, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, leaning down to tap Lily's nose affectionately. "I'm sure Santa knows exactly where you are, and something tells me he has a special surprise in store for you both." The twins smiled, a spark of hope lighting up their eyes. While Martha continued to prepare the room for the night, Emma and Lily snuggled against each other, exhaustion finally catching up to them. Downstairs, in the dining room, Robert faced Elise's questions and David's curious looks. The mansion, which had long housed only adults and their secrets, now pulsed with a new energy. The soft laughter of the twins, echoing down the corridor, seemed to awaken long-dormant memories in the old walls. Christmas, it seemed, still had a few surprises in store for everyone in the mansion. Christmas morning dawned with a dazzling brightness, the snow reflecting the rising sun and bathing the mansion in an almost ethereal glow. Emma was the first to wake, her eyes opening slowly to an unfamiliar setting. For a moment, panic seized her until she felt the familiar warmth of Lily beside her and remembered the events of the previous night. A soft knock on the door preceded Martha's entrance, carrying a tray with hot chocolate and star-shaped cookies. "Good morning, my dears," she sang softly. "Merry Christmas." The twins sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from their eyes. The aroma of hot chocolate made them smile, reminding them of past Christmases with their mother. "Mr. Robert is expecting you for breakfast in an hour," Martha informed them, placing the tray on the bedside table. "I brought some dresses for you to try on. Let's see which fits best, shall we?" While the girls savored their morning treat, Martha helped them dress. Emma chose a red dress with white bows, while Lily opted for an emerald green one embroidered with tiny flowers. Their hair was carefully combed and adorned with festive ribbons. "Just look at you," Martha smiled, her eyes shining with a mixture of tenderness and something else. Longing, perhaps. As lovely as porcelain dolls. Descending the grand staircase, the twins marveled once again at the mansion's decor. In the daylight, everything looked even more magical. The enormous Christmas tree in the entrance hall sparkled with gold and silver ornaments, and the fresh scent of pine filled the air. Robert awaited them at the foot of the stairs, dressed in a festive sweater and wearing a warm smile. "Merry Christmas, girls. Did you sleep well?" Emma and Lily nodded timidly, still a bit hesitant in this new, luxurious world. "Great. Come, breakfast is served in the dining room." The dining room was a spectacle in itself. A long oak table dominated the space, covered with a white linen cloth and decorated with holly arrangements and red candles. Fine china and silver cutlery gleamed under the gentle glow of chandeliers. Elise and David were already seated, speaking quietly. Both fell silent as the girls entered, their eyes widening slightly. "My goodness," Elise murmured, her expression softening. "You look absolutely adorable." David stood, pulling out chairs for the twins. "Come, sit here by me. I can tell you about the time Robert and I nearly set the college Christmas tree on fire." The girls sat down, eyes wide with curiosity. Robert chuckled, shaking his head. "David, don't scare them first thing in the morning." Martha entered, followed by two other maids, carrying trays loaded with an impressive variety of foods: scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, pancakes with maple syrup, fresh fruit, and steaming muffins. "Help yourselves, dears," Martha encouraged, placing generous portions in front of the twins. Initially, Emma and Lily ate slowly, almost as if afraid the food might vanish at any moment. But as the meal progressed and the conversation flowed, they began to relax. Robert, sensing the need to break the ice, started telling stories of Christmases past. He talked about the year he tried to roast a turkey himself and nearly set the kitchen ablaze, making the girls laugh. David chimed in with his own anecdotes, including the time he dressed as Santa Claus for a charity party and got stuck in a chimney. Gradually, Emma began to open up. Her eyes shone with curiosity, and she started asking questions about the paintings on the walls, the books in the shelves, the grand piano in the adjacent room. "Mr. Robert, do you play the piano?" she asked, her voice gaining confidence. Robert smiled. "A little. Would you like to listen after breakfast?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, while Lily watched everything closely, still more reserved. Elise, who initially seemed uncomfortable with the children's presence, gradually surrendered to Emma's innocent charm. "You know," she said conspiratorially, "when Robert was little, he used to hide inside the piano to avoid etiquette lessons." "Elise!" Robert protested, feigning indignation, but his eyes sparkled with amusement. The twins giggled, the image of a young Robert squeezing inside a piano too hilarious to resist. As the meal progressed, Martha watched the scene with mixed emotions. There was joy in seeing the mansion, so long a place of formalities and adult secrets, filled with children's laughter. But there was also a melancholy in her eyes, as if the girls awakened long-buried memories. At one point, when Emma asked a particularly insightful question about one of the paintings, Martha exchanged a meaningful glance with Robert. There was something about that child, a spark of intelligence and curiosity, that felt familiar in a way none of them could explain. As breakfast drew to a close, Robert stood up. "Well, how about opening some presents?" The twins' eyes widened in surprise. "Presents," Lily whispered, speaking for the first time since they'd come downstairs. "Of course," David exclaimed. "It's Christmas, and I'm sure Santa didn't forget about you." As everyone moved to the room with the Christmas tree, Martha gently touched Robert's arm. "Sir," she said quietly, "there's something about these girls, something familiar." Robert nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I know, Martha. I feel the same. But let's enjoy this moment. The answers will come in time." In the room, Emma and Lily were left speechless by the pile of gifts under the tree. There were packages of all sizes and colors, some with their names carefully written on golden tags. "But how?" Emma asked, looking at Robert with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. Robert knelt beside them, smiling gently. "Let's just say I have a direct line to Santa Claus. He wanted to make sure you'd have a special Christmas this year." As the girls, gathered with reverent care, began to open their presents, the adults watched with subdued emotion. There was something profoundly moving about seeing pure, innocent joy after all the hardships the twins had faced. Emma, always the most expressive, couldn't contain her excitement, exclaiming with joy at each new gift. Lily, though quieter, had a happy sparkle in her eyes that spoke volumes. At one point, Emma paused, holding a beautifully illustrated book of fairy tales. She looked at Robert, her eyes filled with gratitude beyond words. "Thank you, Mr. Robert," she said simply. "This is the best Christmas ever." Robert felt a lump in his throat, touched by the girl's sincerity. "You're welcome, dear. I'm happy you're here." As the Christmas morning continued, filled with laughter, torn wrapping paper, and exclamations of surprise, a sense of warmth and belonging settled over the mansion. For Emma and Lily, it was as if they had found a piece of heaven after days of darkness. For Robert, Elise, David, and Martha, it was as if the mansion had come alive again, awakened by the innocent laughter of two lost little souls who, by a quirk of fate, had found their way here. What none of them knew was that this Christmas was just beginning, and that the long-buried secrets of the mansion's past were about to surface, changing their lives forever. Christmas afternoon at Robert's mansion was wrapped in an atmosphere of warmth and contentment. After the excitement of the morning's gift opening, a festive lunch was served, full of traditional dishes and Christmas treats. The twins, Emma and Lily, seemed to blossom under the attention and affection they received, their faces glowing with a happiness that starkly contrasted with their state upon arrival the previous night. As the meal drew to a close, Robert noticed that Emma seemed more thoughtful, playing distractedly with a piece of Christmas pudding on her plate. Sensing that something important was on her mind, he gently broke the comfortable silence at the table. "Emma," he said softly, "you look like you're thinking about something important. Would you like to share it with us?" The girl raised her eyes, meeting the attentive gazes of everyone around the table. For a moment, she hesitated, as if weighing whether or not to speak. Then, with a small sigh that seemed too big for her little body, she began, "I was thinking about Mommy," Emma said, her voice small but clear. "She loved Christmas. She always said it was magical." The silence that followed was palpable. Elise and David exchanged worried looks, while Martha, who had been serving coffee, paused mid-motion, her entire focus on the child. Robert, sensing the importance of the moment, gently encouraged her. "Can you tell us more about your mother, Emma?" "I'm sure she was a very special person." Emma nodded, a small sad smile playing on her lips. "She was the best mom in the world. She would sing to us before bedtime, even when she was very tired. And she made the best Christmas cookies, with colorful icing and all." Lily, who had been quiet, added softly, "And she took us to see the Christmas lights every Christmas Eve." Emma's voice trembled slightly as she continued, "But then she got sick. Very sick." Everyone's hearts tightened at these words. Martha, unable to contain her emotion, sat down in a nearby chair, her eyes already shining with unshed tears. "In the beginning, she still tried to do everything like before," Emma went on, her childish voice carrying a maturity beyond her years. "But then it got hard. She slept a lot, and sometimes she didn't recognize us." Lily, feeling her sister's sadness, squeezed her hand under the table, offering silent comfort. "Daddy, he got sad too," Emma continued, her voice now almost a whisper. "He started going out a lot. Sometimes he didn't come home for days." Robert felt a lump forming in his throat. The idea of such young children facing such hardship was almost unbearable. "When Mommy had to go to the hospital," Emma said, tears now freely running down her cheeks, "Daddy said he was going to get something important and would be right back, but he never came back." Elise let out a muffled sob, having maintained a stoic composure until then. David, eyes filled with tears, reached out to hold Robert's hand, seeking and offering comfort at the same time. Lily, usually the quieter one, surprised everyone when she spoke. "Mommy gave us the porcelain angel at the hospital. She said it would protect us when she couldn't." This simple statement was too much for Martha. The elderly housekeeper let out an audible sob, tears now running freely down her wrinkled face. Emma, seeing everyone's reaction, seemed confused for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to make everyone cry." Robert, fighting back his own tears, quickly stood up and knelt beside Emma's chair. "Oh dear," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You did nothing wrong. We're crying because we're sad for what you and Lily went through, and because we are so impressed by how strong you both are." Elise, regaining some composure, added, "You are very brave girls. Your mother would be so proud." David, wiping his eyes, tried to lighten the mood a little. "And you know what? I bet she's watching over you right now, happy to see that you've found people who care about you." Martha, still struggling to control her emotions, approached the girls and wrapped them in a tight hug. "You are precious," she whispered, her voice trembling. "So very precious." The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Each adult in the room was lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the incredible resilience of these two small children and the tragedy they had endured. It was Lily who broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. "Mommy always said that even on the darkest nights, the stars still shine. We just have to remember to look up." These words, so profound coming from such a young child, seemed to touch something deep in everyone present. Robert felt a surge of determination within him. He didn't know how or why, but he was certain that fate had brought these girls to him for a reason. "Girls," he said, his voice gaining strength, I can't change what happened to you, but I promise that while you're here, we'll do everything we can to bring light and joy into your lives." Emma and Lily looked at Robert, their eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and hope. For a moment, the weight of their loss seemed a little lighter. Martha, still holding the girls, looked at Robert with an expression he couldn't fully decipher. There was gratitude, yes, but also something else. Realization, perhaps, or foreboding. As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere in the mansion slowly transformed. Sadness was still present, but now it was accompanied by a sense of purpose and unity. Each person in that room, in their own way, had made a silent promise to protect and care for these two small souls that fate had placed in their path. What none of them knew was that the revelations of that afternoon were only the beginning. The secrets buried in the mansion's past and its inhabitants were about to come to light, intertwining with Emma and Lily's story in ways that no one could predict. As Christmas Day drew to a close, with the first stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky, there was a palpable feeling that something had changed. The mansion, which had been just a house for so long, was beginning to feel like a home, and for two little girls who had lost so much, it was the start of a new hope. The twilight of Christmas enveloped the mansion in gentle shadows, the tree lights reflecting in the windows like earthly stars. After the intense emotions of lunch, a quiet melancholy had settled in. Emma and Lily, exhausted by the day's experiences, dozed on the sofa in the living room, wrapped in a soft blanket. Robert, Elise, and David spoke in low voices, discussing what to do next regarding the girls. Martha, who had remained silent since the afternoon's revelations, moved around the room quietly, tidying up and keeping herself busy. It was Emma, waking from her nap, who broke the contemplative silence. "Martha," she called softly, rubbing her sleepy eyes, "do you have any children?" The innocent question fell like a bomb into the room. Martha froze mid-step, a look of pain crossing her wrinkled face. Robert and Elise exchanged surprised glances, realizing that despite Martha's many years of service, they knew very little about her personal life. Martha took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Slowly, she turned to face the group, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes, dear," she answered, her voice trembling. "I have a son." The silence that followed was palpable. Robert leaned forward, curiosity evident. "Martha, we had no idea." Martha nodded sadly. "It's not something I usually discuss, sir." Lily, now awake and curious, asked innocently, "Where is he? Why doesn't he come visit for Christmas?" The elderly housekeeper let out a heavy sigh, sitting down in a nearby armchair. Her shoulders seemed weighted by years of unspoken secrets. "My Jack," she began, her voice distant, as if lost in memories. "He was such a bright boy, so full of life. Always dreaming big, always wanting more than this small town could offer." Emma and Lily listened intently, their eyes large with compassion. There was something in Martha's voice that touched them deeply, perhaps reminding them of their own mother. "Jack grew up here in this mansion," Martha continued. "I raised him alone, working hard to give him every opportunity I could. He played in the gardens, studied in the library. This place was his home as much as it was mine." Robert and Elise exchanged guilty looks, realizing how much of Martha's life had passed unnoticed by them over the years. "What happened to him?" David asked gently, sensing there was more to the story. Martha wiped away a solitary tear. "He left. As soon as he turned 18, said he needed to see the world, make his own way. At first, he called, wrote letters, but over time, the messages grew rarer." Emma, with the surprising insight children often have, asked, "You miss him, don't you?" Martha let out a soft sob. "Every day, dear. Every single day." Lily, moved by empathy beyond her years, left the sofa and walked over to Martha, offering a silent hug. The housekeeper embraced her, tears now flowing freely. "The last Christmas we spent together," Martha continued, her voice breaking, "was nearly 20 years ago. He appeared by surprise, full of stories about his travels and plans for the future. I thought I finally had him back, but the next morning, he was gone again. He left only a note saying he loved me, but he needed to follow his path. Robert approached Martha, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Martha, I'm so sorry. We had no idea." Elise, visibly moved, added, "Why never tell us? We could have helped, tried to find him." Martha shook her head sadly. "I didn't want to bother anyone, and part of me always hoped he would come back on his own." Emma, with childlike innocence, suggested, "Maybe we can look for him. Mr. Robert has lots of resources, doesn't he? He could help find Jack." The suggestion hung in the air, laden with possibilities and fears. Martha looked at Robert, a mix of hope and dread in her eyes. Robert, feeling the weight of responsibility, nodded slowly. "If that's what you want, Martha, I'll do everything I can to help locate your son." Martha sobbed, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension in her voice. I don't know, after so long, what if he doesn't want to be found?" David, ever the optimist, interjected, "But what if he does? What if all these years he's also been thinking of coming back, but didn't know how?" The twins, moved by compassion beyond their age, hugged Martha simultaneously. "Don't worry," Emma said. "We'll help find him." "Yeah," Lily agreed. Family should be together. These simple words, from children who had lost so much, seemed to touch something deep in everyone present. Martha embraced the girls, tears now mixed with a trembling smile. "You are angels," she whispered. "True Christmas angels." As the night advanced, a new dynamic formed in the mansion. Martha's long-guarded secrets had created an unexpected bond between everyone. Robert, Maude, Elise, and David saw the housekeeper in a new light, not merely as a loyal employee, but as a woman with her own story of loss and hope. And for Emma and Lily, Martha's story echoed their own loss, creating a deep connection with the elderly housekeeper. In their childlike desire to help reunite Martha with her lost son, they found a new purpose, a way to channel their own pain into something positive. When everyone finally retired to sleep, the mansion seemed to vibrate with a new energy. Secrets had been revealed, bonds strengthened, and a silent mission had been established. Finding Jack wasn't just about reuniting mother and son. It was about healing old wounds and, perhaps, creating a larger and stronger family in the process. What no one could predict was how this search for Jack would intertwine with the twins' own fate, triggering a series of events that would change everyone's lives forever. On the morning after Christmas, as the mansion still slept under a blanket of fresh snow, Robert was already in his study, the phone pressed to his ear. The revelations of the previous day weighed on his mind, pushing him to take action. "Yes, I need a full investigation," he spoke quietly, aware of the silence that lingered over the house. "The name is Jack... No, we don't have a surname yet. Father of twin girls, Emma and Lily. The mother recently passed away. Any information will help." As Robert coordinated the search, Elise entered silently, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She set one before her brother, who nodded in thanks. "Any progress?" she asked, after Robert hung up the phone. "It's still early," he replied, rubbing his tired eyes, "but I've got some people working on it. If there's a trail, we'll find it." Elise sat in the chair opposite the desk, worry etched on her face. "Robert, do you really think this is a good idea? What if this man abandoned the girls on purpose?" Robert sighed deeply. "We don't know the whole story, Elise. Maybe he's in trouble. Maybe he's been looking for them too. Either way, the girls deserve answers." At that moment, Martha knocked softly on the open door, bringing a tray with a light breakfast. Her eyes were puffy, evidence of a sleepless night. "Good morning," she said softly. "I thought you might need something to eat." Robert smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Martha. Please join us. In fact, your perspective may be valuable here." Martha hesitated for a moment before sitting next to Elise. Robert observed her for a moment, noticing how the previous day's events seemed to have aged the housekeeper even more. "Martha," he began gently, "I know this is a delicate matter, but your experience with someone who doesn't want to be found might help us locate the girl's father." The housekeeper nodded slowly, her eyes gaining a determined glint. "When Jack left," she began, her voice trembling, "I tried everything to find him. I learned a few things in the process, Elise leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of things, Martha?" "Well," Martha continued, "people who don't want to be found often avoid using their real names, but they usually pick names or nicknames familiar to them. Also, they tend to gravitate toward places that have personal meaning." Robert nodded, taking quick notes. "That's very helpful, Martha. Anything else you can recall?" Martha closed her eyes for a moment, as if searching painful memories. "Sometimes they keep in touch with one trusted person, someone who can serve as a link, in case they decide to come back." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Robert and Elise exchanged looks, realizing how much Martha had kept to herself over the years. At that moment, the phone rang, breaking the tension. Robert answered quickly, his face lighting up as he listened. "I see. Yes, that's very helpful. Keep investigating and keep me informed." "Thank you." He hung up and looked at Elise and Martha with a mix of excitement and concern. "We have a lead," he announced. "It seems a man matching Jack's description was seen working temporary bar jobs in several towns in recent months. He's clearly struggling financially, moving often." Elise frowned. "That explains why the girls were alone. But why would he leave them behind?" Martha, her voice filled with compassion, offered, "Maybe he believed he couldn't care for them properly. Sometimes people make desperate decisions when they're suffering." Robert nodded, thoughtful. "I'll ask them to focus the search on towns near hospitals where the girl's mother might have been treated. If Martha is right about meaningful places, he might be nearby." While the adults discussed strategies upstairs, Emma and Lily were beginning to wake. The guest room, now decorated with the toys and gifts from the day before, felt like a cozy haven for the two little ones. Emma was the first to sit up in bed, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Lily," she whispered, gently nudging her sister, "do you think they'll find Daddy?" Lily, turning to face her sister, answered with a voice full of childlike hope. "Yes, Mr. Robert seems like he can do anything." The twins hugged each other, finding comfort as they always did. "What do you think he'll be like when we find him?" Emma asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Lily thought for a moment. "I think he'll be sad, but happy to see us, and maybe a little scared." Emma nodded, perfectly understanding what her sister meant. "We'll have to show him we still love him, right?" "Yes," Lily agreed. "And maybe we can all live here in the mansion, with Mr. Robert and Ms. Martha and everyone." The girls smiled at the idea, their young minds creating a perfect future where all the pieces fit together harmoniously. Downstairs, unaware of the twins' hopeful dreams, the adults continued their planning. Robert had summoned David, who arrived quickly, bringing additional contacts that might help in the search. "We need to be careful," David warned. "If this man is running from something, approaching him directly might scare him off even more." Elise, who had remained silent for a while, finally spoke. "What about the girls?" "What do we tell them?" Robert pondered for a moment. "For now, I think it's best not to raise false hopes. Let's tell them we're doing our best to find their father, but without making any promises." Martha, who had been watching the conversation closely, added softly, "Perhaps it would be good to give them something to focus on while we wait." "A distraction." "Good idea," Robert agreed. "We can plan some activities, maybe a walk around town or a visit to the zoo." While the group continued to plan both the search for Jack and the activities for the girls, the sound of childish laughter echoed down the hallway. Emma and Lily, dressed in their new Christmas pajamas, entered the room, their faces glowing with the innocence of childhood. "Good morning," they sang in unison, oblivious to the tension in the room. Robert forced a smile, determined to protect the girls' fragile happiness. "Good morning, little ones. Who's hungry? How about some pancakes for breakfast?" As the twins cheered the idea of pancakes, the adults exchanged significant glances. The search for Jack had begun, and with it, a journey that promised to uncover secrets, heal old wounds, and perhaps reunite a shattered family. What no one could predict was how this search would intertwine with Martha's own past and the mansion's long-buried secrets, weaving a web of intertwined destinies that would change everyone's lives forever. The morning after Christmas dawned cold and clear, the winter sun reflecting on the snow and making the mansion shine like a crystal palace. The silence of dawn was broken by the distant sound of a car approaching, its tires squeaking on the compact snow of the driveway. Martha, who was already up preparing breakfast, frowned upon hearing the unexpected sound. They weren't expecting visitors so early, especially not the day after Christmas. Wiping her hands on her apron, she headed to the front door, curious and a bit apprehensive. Opening the heavy oak door, Martha felt the cold morning air hit her face. But it wasn't the cold that made her gasp and cling to the doorframe for support. There, standing on the threshold, was a man she hadn't seen in nearly 2 decades, yet would recognize anywhere. "Jack," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with emotion and disbelief. The man before her seemed to have aged far more than the years would justify. His face was lined with worry and exhaustion, his unshaven beard and bloodshot eyes hinting at sleepless nights. But it was undeniably him, her son, her Jack. "Mom," he said, his voice rough and broken. I didn't know where else to go." For a moment, both remained frozen, decades of separation and unspoken emotions hanging between them like an invisible barrier. Then, as if a spell had been broken, Martha moved forward, wrapping Jack in a tight, desperate embrace. "Oh, my boy," she sobbed, her tears dampening Jack's worn jacket. "My boy." Jack, who initially stiff with surprise, slowly relaxed into his mother's arms, allowing himself for the first time in years to simply be a son seeking comfort. The commotion at the door drew Robert and Elise's attention. They hurried down the stairs, fearing some problem. Upon reaching the hall, they stopped abruptly, stunned by the scene before them. "Martha," Robert called softly, not wanting to interrupt but needing to understand. Martha pulled away slightly from Jack, turning to face Robert and Elise with tear-filled eyes, but a radiant smile. "It's my Jack," she said, her voice overflowing with joy and disbelief. He's back." Jack, now noticing the presence of others, took a step back, his eyes darting nervously between his mother and the well-dressed strangers. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," he began, his voice tense. "I didn't know. I'm looking for my daughters, Emma and Lily. Someone told me they might be here." Shock washed over everyone like a wave. Robert and Elise exchanged astonished glances, pieces of the puzzle falling into place in an unexpected and almost unbelievable way. "You're the girl's father?" Elise asked, unable to hide her surprise. Jack nodded, worry evident on his face. "Are they all right? Are they here? Please, I need to see them." Martha, who still clung to Jack's arm, looked at him with confusion and wonder. You have daughters. I'm a grandmother." The realization seemed to strike Jack like a punch in the gut. He looked at his mother, years of guilt and regret reflected in his eyes. "Mom, there's so much I need to tell you. So many things I did wrong." Robert, understanding the need to control the situation, stepped forward. "Jack, I'm Robert. Your daughters are here, safe and sound. They arrived on Christmas Eve, alone and frightened. We took them in and were just trying to find you." Jack closed his eyes for a moment, relief and shame passing over his face. "Thank God they're safe. I made so many mistakes. When Marie died, I just lost myself." Martha, still processing everything, gently guided Jack inside. "Come in, son. You look exhausted. Let's sit down, and you can tell us everything." As they headed to the living room, Elise whispered to Robert, "The girls are still asleep. Should we wake them?" Robert considered for a moment. "No, let them sleep for now. We need to understand the situation before involving them." In the living room, Jack sank into an armchair, suddenly looking very small and vulnerable. Martha sat beside him, unable to take her eyes off her long-lost son. "Start at the beginning, Jack," Robert encouraged gently. "We want to understand and help." Jack took a deep breath, and the words poured out like a torrent. He spoke of meeting Marie, the birth of the twins, their happiness together. Then came Marie's diagnosis, the struggle against illness, and the piling medical bills. He described how, after Marie's death, he was overwhelmed by grief and responsibilities. "I couldn't look at them without seeing Marie," he confessed, tears rolling down his face. "So I started drinking, working double shifts to stay away from home. One night, after a particularly hard shift, I came back and they were gone. The apartment was empty." Martha held Jack's hand, offering silent comfort as he continued. I panicked. I searched everywhere but was too scared to go to the police. My recent behavior wasn't ideal. Finally, someone said they saw two little girls taken in by a wealthy man in a fancy car. I followed the lead here. Robert and Elise exchanged glances, finally understanding the chain of events that led to this moment. Jack, Robert said calmly. Your daughters arrived here alone, hungry and lost. We took them in and were just planning how to find you. Jack buried his face in his hands, openly sobbing now. I failed them. I failed Marie. I failed you, Mom. I don't deserve anyone's forgiveness, Martha. Tears in her eyes, embraced her son. Oh, Jack. A mother's love doesn't need to be earned. It's always here, waiting. At that moment, the sound of small footsteps echoed in the corridor. Everyone turned to see Emma and Lily standing in the doorway, their wide eyes fixed on the familiar figure in the armchair. Daddy, Emma whispered, her voice a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The silence that followed was charged with emotion, the air heavy with the promise of reconciliation, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Fate, it seemed, had woven an intricate tapestry, bringing together lives separated in ways no one could have foreseen. Time seemed to freeze the moment Emma and Lily spotted their father. Jack, tears in his eyes, stood slowly from the armchair, his legs visibly trembling. My girls, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. For an instant, no one moved. The twins, still in their pajamas and with sleep-tousled hair, looked at their father with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Jack, for his part, seemed torn between rushing to them and fearing their rejection. It was Emma who broke the impasse. With a muffled cry of, Daddy, she ran across the room, throwing herself into Jack's arms. Lily, always more cautious, followed closely behind, clinging to her father's leg as he knelt down to embrace them both. Jack's sobs echoed through the room as he held his daughters tight, murmuring apologies and declarations of love. The girls, tears streaming down their small faces, clung to him as if afraid he might disappear again. Martha, Robert, and Elise watched the scene with tear-filled eyes, deeply moved by the emotional reunion. Martha, in particular, seemed to be witnessing a dream. Her long-lost son reunited with his daughters, who had so recently entered her life. After a few minutes of hugs and tears, Jack pulled back slightly, holding each daughter's face in his hands. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice trembling. I'm sorry for leaving, for not being strong enough for you. Emma, always the most vocal, replied, It's okay, Daddy, we were scared. But Mr. Robert and Miss Martha took care of us. Hearing Martha's name, Jack looked at his mother, the guilt evident in his eyes. Mom, he began, I owe you so many explanations to all of you. Robert, sensing the family needed some privacy, suggested, Why don't we all sit down? Martha, maybe some tea to calm our nerves. While Martha headed to the kitchen, the others settled in the living room. The twins refused to let go of their father's hands, sitting on either side of him on the sofa. Jack took a deep breath, looking at Robert and Elise. I don't even know where to start thanking you for taking care of my daughters. Elise smiled gently. There's no need to thank us. Anyone would have done the same. Martha returned with a tea tray, serving everyone before sitting beside Jack. Silence settled for a moment, heavy with unasked questions and the need for explanations. Jack, Martha began softly, why did you leave? All these years. Jack closed his eyes, pain evident on his face. I was young and foolish, Mom. I thought the world outside had so much to offer that I was missing out by staying here. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until it was too late. He paused, looking at his daughters before continuing. When I met Marie, I thought I'd finally found my place. We had the twins, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. But then Marie got sick, and suddenly all the responsibilities, all the bills, I felt overwhelmed. Martha held her son's hand, offering silent comfort as he went on. I should have come back to you, Mom. I should have asked for help. But the shame of admitting I had failed, that I couldn't take care of my own family, stopped me. Robert and Elise listened attentively, the pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. Elise voiced the question that hung in the air. "Martha, why did you never tell us about Jack?" Martha sighed, her eyes filled with old sadness. At first, the pain was too great. And then, well, so much time passed that it seemed easier to keep it to myself. I feared that speaking of Jack would make his absence more real. The twins, who had been quiet, looked from Jack to Martha with curiosity. Emma, always brave, asked, "So Martha is our grandmother?" Martha let out a gentle laugh mixed with a sob. "Yes, dear, it seems I am." Lily, in her soft voice, added, "Is that why you looked so sad when we talked about our dad yesterday?" The innocent question brought tears to Martha's eyes. "Yes, my love. Seeing you reminded me of my own lost child. I never imagined he was your father." Jack looked at his mother, years of regret reflected in his eyes. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope that in time I can fix what I broke between us." Martha squeezed Jack's hand. "Oh, my son. A mother's love knows no limits. I'm just so happy to have you back, and to have these two precious granddaughters." Robert, who had remained silent, observing the scene, finally spoke. "Jack, I know you've been through a lot, but here, in this house, you have a chance to start over. Your mother is here, your daughters are safe. If you're willing, we'd like to help you get back on your feet." Jack looked at Robert with obvious gratitude. I don't know what to say. After everything I've done," Elise intervened. "The past is the past, Jack. What matters now is the future. These girls need their father, and Martha deserves to have her son back." The twins, sensing the emotional atmosphere, hugged Jack again. "Are you going to stay with us now, Daddy?" Lily asked timidly. Jack looked at his daughters, at his mother, then at Robert and Elise. In that moment, he made a silent promise to himself and everyone in the room. "Yes, my love. I'm staying, and this time I promise I'll do things right." As the morning went on, the mansion seemed to vibrate with a new energy. Years of secrets, pain, and separation were finally surfacing, but with them came the promise of healing and new beginnings. The family, once fragmented, now began to come together, weaving a complex tapestry of love, forgiveness, and second chances. And at its center were two little twins, whose fate had inadvertently reunited broken hearts and opened doors to a future none of them could have predicted. As the afternoon progressed, the atmosphere in the mansion hovered between cautious joy and palpable tension. Robert, sensing the need for Jack and Martha to have a private conversation, offered to take the twins for a walk in the snow-covered gardens. "Emma, Lily," he called gently, "how about we go outside and build a snowman? Let's give your father and grandmother a moment to talk." The girls looked hesitantly at Jack, clearly reluctant to move away from him so soon after their reunion. Jack smiled encouragingly. "It's all right, my dears. Daddy will be here when you come back. I promise." With one last tight hug, the twins followed Robert and Elise outside, their giggles echoing down the corridor as they excitedly discussed the snowman's design. The silence that followed in the living room was heavy, charged with 2 decades of unspoken words. Martha and Jack faced each other, both struggling to find a starting point. It was Martha who finally broke the silence. "Oh, Jack," she sighed, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why did you never come home?" Jack lowered his eyes, shame evident on his face. "I wanted to, Mom. So many times I did, but the longer I stayed away, the harder it became. I was afraid." "Afraid of what, my son?" Martha asked softly, reaching out to touch Jack's face. "Afraid I had disappointed you beyond forgiveness," he confessed, tears forming in his eyes. "At first, I was so determined to prove I could make it on my own. But then things started to go wrong, and I didn't know how to come back." Martha felt her heart ache at her son's words. "Jack, you could never disappoint me so much that I would reject you. You're my son, my only child. I would have moved mountains to help you." Jack sobbed quietly. "I know that now, Mom, but back then I was so lost, so full of foolish pride. And then, when I met Marie and we had the twins, I thought I had finally done something right, built something on my own." Martha listened attentively as Jack unburdened himself, recounting the years of struggle, Marie's illness, and the emotional and financial hardships he endured. "When Marie died," he continued, his voice breaking, "I felt completely overwhelmed. Looking at the girls was like seeing everything I had lost, everything I couldn't provide. I started drinking, working longer and longer shifts just to avoid facing my own failure." Martha held her son's hands in hers, offering the comfort he had denied himself for so long. "Oh, my dear boy, if only you had come to me. I would have done anything to help you and my granddaughters." Jack nodded, tears now running freely down his face. "I know, Mom, and that's what makes it so hard to bear. I stole years from you with your granddaughters, years we can never get back." Martha took a deep breath, summoning the courage for her own confession. "Jack, there's something you need to know. Saititi, I tried to find you. Many times." Jack looked at his mother, surprised. "You tried?" Martha nodded, her eyes reflecting years of fruitless searching. "I hired detectives, placed ads in newspapers, even traveled to towns where I thought you might be. But you always seemed one step ahead. Or maybe you didn't want to be found." Realizing how hard his mother had tried to reconnect with him, Jack felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Mom, I didn't know. I moved around a lot, used different names. I was running from myself as much as anyone else." At that moment, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the garden, reminding them of the twins. Martha and Jack turned to look out the window, seeing Emma and Lily happily playing in the snow, with Robert and Elise helping them build a giant snowman. "They are wonderful, Jack," Martha said softly. "So full of life and love, despite everything they've been through." Jack nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "They are the best part of Marie and me. I almost lost them because of my own stupidity." Martha squeezed her son's hand. "But you're here now. We have a chance to fix things, to be the family we always should have been." Jack looked at his mother, years of guilt and regret in his eyes. "Can you ever forgive me, Mom? After everything I've done, all the years I stole from us?" Martha pulled Jack into a tight embrace, silent tears running down her face. "Oh, my son, I forgave you the moment I saw you at my door." A mother's love knows no bounds or conditions. While mother and son embraced, years of pain and separation slowly began to dissipate. Outside, the twins' laughter filled the air, a reminder of the joy and hope the future could bring. Robert and Elise, watching the scene through the window, exchanged understanding looks. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that there would be many difficult conversations and adjustments to make. But at that moment, seeing Martha and Jack reunited and the twins playing carefree, there was a palpable sense that healing had begun. "They'll need our support," Elise murmured to her brother. Robert nodded, a soft smile on his lips. "And they shall have it. All of them." As the sun began to set, casting golden tones on the snow, the mansion seemed to vibrate with a new energy. It was as if the old walls were witnessing the birth of something precious and fragile, a family healing, reconnecting, and learning to love again. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a very long time, it was full of possibilities and hope. The next day dawned with an atmosphere of anticipation in the mansion. Jack, who had spent the night in one of the guest rooms, woke up early, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The joy of being reunited with his daughters and mother battled against the crushing weight of guilt and shame over his years of absence. Descending the stairs, he found Martha in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of pancakes and fresh coffee filled the air, stirring childhood memories. "Good morning, son," Martha smiled, her voice filled with a warmth that Jack felt he did not deserve. "Good morning, Mom," he replied hesitantly, sitting at the kitchen table. Can I help with anything?" Martha shook her head, placing a plate of pancakes before him. "Just eat, dear. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks." Jack looked down at the plate, feeling a lump in his throat. "Mom, I don't know if I can accept this. All this kindness. After everything I've done." Martha stopped what she was doing and sat beside Jack, holding his hands in hers. "Jack, listen to me. Forgiveness is not something you earn. It's a gift you receive. And I'm offering it to you with all my heart." Tears began to form in Jack's eyes. "But how? How can you forgive me so easily?" "It wasn't easy," Martha admitted gently. "There was a lot of pain, a lot of anger over the years. But love, a mother's love, overcomes all of that. And now seeing you here, seeing my granddaughters, this is all I ever wanted." At that moment, the sound of small footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Emma and Lily entered the kitchen, their eyes lighting up at the sight of Jack. "Daddy!" they cried in unison, running to hug him. Jack embraced them, feeling a wave of love and gratitude. "Good morning, my princesses," he murmured, kissing the tops of their heads. As the girls settled in for breakfast, Martha began telling stories about Jack's childhood. "Did you know your daddy used to climb the apple tree in the garden to get the highest apples?" The twins listened, fascinated, their eyes wide with admiration. Jack, for his part, felt a mix of nostalgia and shame, realizing how much of his life and his daughters' lives he had missed. Robert and Elise joined them soon after, bringing a sense of normalcy to the scene. As everyone ate, Robert cleared his throat, catching Jack's attention. "Jack, I've been thinking," he began, "and I'd like to make you an offer. My company is expanding, and we need someone to manage a new department. It would be an opportunity for you to start fresh, with a stable salary and benefits for you and the girls." Jack looked at Robert, stunned. I don't know what to say. You barely know me, and after everything that happened," Elise intervened kindly. "Jack, everyone deserves a second chance. And your daughters deserve a present and stable father." The twins, who had been listening intently, exchanged excited looks. "Does that mean we'll stay here?" Emma asked hopefully. Martha smiled at her granddaughters. "Well, this mansion certainly has enough room for all of us. What do you think, Jack?" Jack looked around the table, at the expectant faces of his family, both old and new. The weight of the decision was immense, but for the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. I'd really like that," he said finally, his voice trembling with emotion. "If you all truly accept me back." Martha reached for her son's hand, squeezing it firmly. "Always, my dear, always." The twins cheered, their infectious joy filling the kitchen. As the conversation turned to practical details and future plans, Jack began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have a second chance at life. Later that day, as Jack helped the girls organize their new toys in their room, Emma asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy," she began hesitantly, "what's an extended family?" Jack sat on the bed, pulling Emma and Lily close. "Well, sweetheart, an extended family is when we have more people than just parents and children. Like now we have Grandma Martha and Mr. Roberting and Miss Elise." Lily, always the thoughtful one, frowned. "But they're not our blood relatives, are they?" Jack smiled softly. "Not all families are made of blood, my love. Sometimes family is the people who love and care for us, and even when they don't have to." The girls seemed to think about this for a moment. Then Emma beamed. "I like our extended family. It's like having more people to love us." Jack felt his heart expand at his daughter's words. "Yes, dear, that's exactly it." As night fell, Jack found himself on the balcony, gazing at the stars. Martha joined him quietly, offering a mug of hot tea. "What are you thinking about, son?" she asked gently. Jack sighed, a small smile on his lips. "About how lucky I am, how I don't deserve all this forgiveness and love." Martha placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Jack. It's about healing, about moving forward. And as for love, well, love simply is. It needs no reason or justification." Jack nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. The road ahead would still be long and sometimes difficult. There would be days when guilt and shame tried to swallow him again. But now he had something he lacked before, a support network, a family that loved him unconditionally. As mother and son stood there under the starry sky, there was a palpable sense that a new chapter was beginning. A chapter of healing, forgiveness, and renewed love. And at its center were two small twins, whose innocent and pure love had been the catalyst for bringing a broken family together. The future, for the first time in a long while, seemed to shine with infinite possibilities. Christmas Day at the mansion had dawned with an atmosphere of expectation and renewal. The fresh snow that had fallen overnight covered the garden like a spotless white cloak, symbolizing the new beginning they all longed for. Emma and Lily were the first to wake, their childish excitement contagious as they ran through the halls, knocking on every door and announcing it was time to open presents. Jack, still not used to the idea of truly being present in his daughters' lives, felt a mix of joy and guilt at being awakened by their cheerful voices. "Daddy, come on! Santa Claus came!" Emma exclaimed, tugging at Jack's hand. Smiling hesitantly, Jack followed his daughters to the main living room, where a huge Christmas tree dominated the space. Under its decorated branches lay a pile of presents, more than the girls had ever seen. Martha was already there, her face radiant at seeing her grandchildren together. Robert and Elise joined them shortly after, carrying trays of hot chocolate and freshly baked Christmas cookies. "Merry Christmas to everyone," Robert announced warmly, raising his mug of hot chocolate in a toast. The twins could barely contain their excitement as they tore through colorful wrapping paper, revealing toys, books, and new clothes. Jack watched, amazed by the pure joy on his daughters' faces, realizing how many such moments he had missed. "Look, Daddy," Lily exclaimed, holding up a beautifully illustrated fairy tale book. "Will you read to us tonight?" Jack felt a lump in his throat. "Of course, my love. It would be my pleasure." Martha, noticing the emotion on her son's face, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right, dear. You have all the time in the world now." As the morning progressed, the family gathered in the kitchen to prepare Christmas lunch. Martha took charge, assigning tasks to everyone. Jack found himself chopping vegetables next to Robert, a surprisingly therapeutic activity. "So, Jack," Robert began casually, "have you had time to think about my offer?" Jack paused, the weight of the decision hanging over him. "Yes, I've thought a lot, and I'd like to accept, if the offer still stands," Robert smiled, patting Jack's shoulder. "Great, we'll start making arrangements after the holiday. I'm sure you'll be a great asset to the company." Lunch was a feast of laughter, stories, and delicious food. The twins enchanted everyone with their innocent anecdotes, while the adults shared memories of Christmases past. Jack, initially quiet, gradually opened up, sharing some of his experiences from the years he'd been away. After the meal, everyone gathered in the living room. Martha took out an old photo album, calling the twins over. "Come, dears, I want to show you some pictures of your daddy when he was little." Jack felt a wave of nostalgia and shame at seeing photos of his happy childhood, aware of how much he had thrown away. But his daughter's excitement at seeing their baby daddy was contagious, and soon he found himself laughing and sharing stories of his youth. "Look, Jack," Martha said, pointing to a particular photo. "Remember this Christmas? You had just gotten your first bike." Jack nodded, long-forgotten memories surfacing. "Yes, I remember. You and Dad saved all year to buy me that bike." Martha smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Your father would be so proud to see you now, Jack. Coming back home, caring for your girls." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "I just hope I can be half the father he was." As the afternoon wore on, the family decided to take a walk in the snowy gardens. The twins ran ahead, making snow angels and starting a snowball fight that soon involved everyone. Jack, covered in snow and laughing harder than he had in years, suddenly found himself looking at his mother. Martha, with snowflakes in her grey hair, smiled at him with a love so pure and unconditional that Jack's heart tightened. "Mom," he said softly, approaching her, I want you to know how sorry I am for everything." Martha took her son's hands in hers. "Oh, Jack, what matters is that you're here now. We have a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild our family. It's all I've ever wanted." Just then, Emma and Lily ran up, their faces rosy from the cold and excitement. "Grandma, Daddy, come on, let's make a huge snowman." Jack and Martha exchanged glances of mutual understanding before joining the girls. Together, grandmother, father, and granddaughters rolled large snowballs, their laughter echoing in the garden. By nightfall, everyone was exhausted but happy. Back inside the living room, Jack kept his promise and sat down to read the fairy tale book to Emma and Lily. They snuggled up on either side of him on the sofa, their eyes shining with admiration and love. As Jack read, His voice gaining confidence with each page, Martha watched the scene with a full heart. Robert and Elise, seated on the other side of the room, exchanged satisfied smiles, feeling they had been part of something truly special. As the story ended and the twins began to drift off to sleep, Jack looked around the room, at this family that had welcomed him back with such love and forgiveness. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, that there would be tough days and obstacles to overcome, but for the first time in a long time, he truly felt at home. "Merry Christmas," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Merry Christmas," everyone responded in unison, their voices blending into a harmony of renewed hope and love. As the Christmas night came to a close, the mansion seemed to vibrate with a new energy. The old walls, which had witnessed so many lonely Christmases, now echoed with the laughter of children and the warmth of a reunited family. It was a new beginning, a chance to heal old wounds and create precious new memories. And at the center of it all were two little twins, whose innocent love had been the catalyst for bringing a broken family together and creating something beautiful and new from the fragments of the past. The new year approached, bringing with it the promise of fresh starts and renewed hopes. At the mansion, the atmosphere was one of expectation and transformation. Robert had convened a family meeting in the spacious library, the crackling fireplace creating a cozy environment. "I have an important announcement," Robert began, his gaze traveling over the attentive faces around him. "Recent events have deeply inspired me. Seeing how our lives were transformed by the unexpected arrival of Emma and Lily made me realize that we have both the power and the responsibility to make a difference for other families in similar crises." Jack, seated with the twins in his lap, felt a tightening in his chest, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension for what was to come. "I'm creating a foundation," Robert announced, his voice filled with determination. "The New Beginnings Foundation will be dedicated to helping families in crisis, offering financial support, counseling, and resources to those facing illness, loss, or separation." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Martha, seated beside Elise, had tears in her eyes. "Jack," Robert continued, turning to the man who so recently had been a stranger and now was an integral part of their lives, "I'd like you to consider leading one of the Foundation's programs. Your personal experience would be invaluable to other families going through similar situations." Jack was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the trust placed in him. "As I would be honored," he managed to say, his voice filled with emotion. "And Martha," Robert turned to the longtime housekeeper, "in recognition of your years of dedication, we'd like to offer you a management position here at the mansion. You'd oversee not only the daily operations, but also the transformation of part of the property into a support center for the foundation." Martha raised her hands to her face, unable to hold back tears of joy and gratitude. "Oh, Robert, I don't know what to say." Elise stepped forward, hugging Martha affectionately. "Say yes, Martha. This house has always been as much yours as ours." The following weeks were filled with intense activity. Jack threw himself into his new role at the foundation with determination, finding a purpose he had long lost. He spent his days learning about non-profit management and his evenings cherishing precious time with his daughters, rebuilding the fragile bonds between them. Martha, for her part, flourished in her new position. Her years of experience and deep knowledge of the mansion and its inhabitants proved invaluable during the property's transition to its new purpose. As the year's end approached, a sense of renewal hovered over the mansion. On New Year's Eve, the family gathered to decorate a new Christmas tree, symbolizing their fresh beginnings. The main hall was filled with laughter and animated conversation as boxes of decorations were opened and ornaments were carefully placed on the branches. "Daddy, look at this," Emma exclaimed, holding up a delicate glass globe. "It looks magical." Jack smiled, helping his daughter hang the ornament. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like you." Lily, always the keen observer, rummaged through a box when her eyes widened with surprise. "Grandma Martha," she called softly, "look what I found." Martha approached, her heart melting at what Lily held, the little porcelain angel the girls had brought with them, the last memory of their mother. "Oh, my love," Martha said, kneeling beside Lily. "This is very special." Jack, noticing what was happening, came closer. He took the angel carefully, tears shining in his eyes. "Your mother would love knowing it's here with us," he said softly. Robert, observing the scene, had an idea. "How about we place it at the top of the tree? That way, it can watch over all of us." The twins agreed enthusiastically. With the help of a ladder, Jack climbed up to place the angel on the tree's pinnacle, his hands trembling slightly with emotion. When the angel was finally in place, a reverent silence fell over the room. The glow of candles and tree lights reflected on the porcelain, making the angel shine as if alive. "Marie would be so proud," Martha said softly, breaking the silence. "Proud of her girls, proud of you, Jack, and so happy to see your family united and loved." Jack nodded, unable to speak through the knot in his throat. He pulled his daughters close, hugging them firmly. Elise, ever practical, decided to lighten the emotional atmosphere. "Well, I think this tree deserves a celebration. How about some hot chocolate for everyone?" The twins cheered at the idea, running to the kitchen with Elise. The adults followed more slowly, each lost in their own thoughts and emotions. Before leaving the room, Jack paused, looking once more at the angel on the tree's top. "Thank you," he whispered, not sure if he was speaking to Marie, to fate, or to some greater force that had orchestrated this miraculous reunion. Robert, noticing Jack's hesitation, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, my friend. The future awaits us." In the kitchen, the sound of laughter and cheerful conversation echoed. The twins told jokes, Martha prepared the perfect hot chocolate, and Elise discussed animatedly her plans for the foundation with Robert. Jack paused at the doorway, taking in the scene. This, he realized, was the true miracle. Not just the reunion of a family, but the creation of something new and beautiful from the fragments of the past. Joining his family, Jack felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would still be challenging. There was much to rebuild and heal. But now he had something he once thought lost forever. A family, a home, and the chance for a new beginning. Outside, snow began to fall softly, covering the world in a white mantle of possibilities. And atop the Christmas tree in the hall, the little porcelain angel glowed, a silent reminder of the love that had brought them all together and the love that would keep them united in the years to come. That night, as the family gathered around the tree, their voices mingling in conversation and laughter, there was a sense that something extraordinary had happened. A millionaire had invited two homeless twin girls for Christmas dinner, and in that act of kindness, lives were transformed, hearts were healed, and a family was reunited. And so, with hope in their hearts and love in their eyes, they looked to the future, ready to face whatever came next, united by the miracle they had experienced and the love they now shared.